The Adelaide O-Bahn was built to be fast. When it opened, buses could run at up to 100 kilometers an hour on the guideway. Today, they do not normally run at that original speed. So the question is, how fast could the O-Bahn really go? And no, I'm not saying we should send a bus flying through Clemsig at 140 tomorrow. This is a hypothetical discussion. What would happen if Adelaide properly renewed the guideway, chose the right fleet, and actually designed the system around speed again? First, the history. The O-Bahn opened between the city and Paradise in 1986, then extended to Tea Tree Plaza in 1989. The tunnel into the city was added much later in 2017. So it's not true that absolutely nothing has changed in 40 years. But the important part, the concrete guided track that buses run on, is mostly original 1980s infrastructure. This means it has carried millions and millions of bus movements over nearly 4 decades. That is seriously impressive, but it also creates a problem. The original operating speed was 100 kilometers an hour. In 2012, a risk review after an earlier incident led to the speed being reduced to 85 kilometers an hour. However, there are 90 kilometer an hour signs along the O-Bahn, but the speed is 85 kilometers an hour according to GPS speeds. But the main point is this: the O-Bahn no longer runs at the 100 kilometers an hour it was built around. Why? The official reason for the reduction was safety, reducing the consequences of an incident and giving a driver more chance to recover control if something went wrong. But there were also reports at the time about vibration, unevenness, wear, and sections of track needing to be re-leveled. And honestly, both things can be true. A guideway does not have to be falling apart to become less comfortable, less smooth, and less ideal for high-speed operation. Now, the obvious answer would be just replace the old sections of guideway. That sounds easy until you remember what the O-Bahn actually does. This is not some quiet little branch with a bus every 20 minutes. At peak times, buses are coming through consistently. During the morning peak, there can be a bus heading towards the city about every minute. If we close a major section for months and suddenly those buses are back on normal roads, caught in traffic, blocking intersections, and making every trip slower. So a full rebuild would be a huge job. It would probably need staged work, short closures, replacement buses, road changes, overnight works, or some combination of all of them. But long term, some form of major renewal is the real question. Because the O-Bahn is supposed to be Adelaide's fast corridor. It was built to avoid traffic. It was built to make buses feel more like trains. Now, let's get into the fun part. Could it go back to 100 kilometers an hour? Personally, I think 100 is the most realistic target, but only after the guideway is properly assessed, renewed where necessary, and tested with the actual buses that use it. The O-Bahn originally used Mercedes-Benz 0305 rigid and articulated buses. Those buses were good for their day, but Adelaide's modern fleet has more power available. We have K320 articulated buses, K360 articulated buses, K320 rigid buses, and K280 rigids. On paper, many of these buses have far more performance than the original fleet. And then there are the K230s. I'm just going to say it. For an O-Bahn that is meant to be fast, the K230 is not exactly an exciting choice. At 85 kilometers an hour, they can do the job. But if the whole point is restoring a genuinely high-speed busway, you would want every bus in the fleet to have enough power to reach the target speed properly, hold it, and still have safe performance left over. Because horsepower is not everything, but it definitely matters when you are trying to get a fully loaded bus up to speed. So, could the O-Bahn do 110? This is where people get carried away. I have measured sideways g-force on some normal O-Bahn curves at 85 kilometers an hour, and they do not feel anywhere near their limit. But that does not prove the same curve is safe at 130 or 140 kilometers an hour. A phone measurement is interesting, but it is not engineering data. It can be affected by the angle of the phone, bumps, bus body roll, vibration, and the way the bus is loaded. And a speed limit is not just about whether the bus feels like it can make the bend. You also have to consider guideway loads, track condition, braking distance, tyre performance, suspension, passenger comfort, emergency handling, articulation behaviour, wind, and whether every bus in the fleet can meet the same standard. So I'm not going to pretend that 130 or 140 kilometers an hour is a realistic proposal. Could a completely rebuilt O-Bahn with a specifically tested fleet theoretically be engineered for more than 100? Maybe. But that would need a proper engineering case, serious testing, approval, and probably a lot of money. For Adelaide as it exists right now, I think the interesting question is much simpler. Should the O-Bahn be renewed to restore 100 kilometers an hour? And after that, could 110 be looked at? At 110, the time saving would not be massive, but noticeable. We are talking about minutes across the whole corridor, not some insane 10-minute difference. But the O-Bahn was always designed to be Adelaide's quick route. It is a high-speed guided busway. That is literally what makes it special. Now, someone commented in one of my videos that articulated buses, especially CB80s, could have trailer sway at higher speeds. It is a fair thing to bring up. There are a couple of other things that we could try, however, like sway bars, or putting a second set of guide wheels on the rear axle. Of course, this wouldn't be so that the axle can turn, but rather for stabilization. I think the O-Bahn does not need to become some 140 km/h fantasy route. But after 40 years, I do think that Adelaide should be thinking seriously about its future. Renew the guideway properly, make it smooth again, choose buses that are actually suited to a fast corridor, restore 100 km/h if the engineering says it's safe, and then only after that, ask whether 110 is worth it. Because the O-Bahn is one of Adelaide's most unique pieces of infrastructure. It should not just survive. It should be allowed to be what it was meant to be, fast. So what do you think? Would you restore 100 kilometers an hour, or would you push for 110? Or would you leave it exactly as it is? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next video.